all join palms and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. Keeping the palms joined. Put the palms down. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for showing up. Glad you're all here. Anyone here for the first time? What brings you here?
Coming to try something new, find a little spiritual balance.
Yeah. Wasn't working the other way, huh?
No.
Yeah. Oh, that guy got you here?
Yes.
Oh. That explains everything. But it definitely wasn't working the other way. Who else for the first time here? A couple hands. Yeah, go ahead. Anybody want to share why they're here?
Learn meditation.
Learn meditation. Nice. Welcome. Thank you.
I guess maybe try to find a little balance in my life.
Yeah. More balance. Who else? First time?
Yeah, brought by these lovely two for meditation and more peace.
Those two. I think I should preface this by saying don't tell me who brought you here, because then I've already put you in a box and a label, and I do everything that I'm about to tell you all not to do. So yeah. Sorry. Go ahead. Yeah. And why did how did they just said you should come try this thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you said, all right, I'm in.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, glad you're here. Anyone else? A few hands in the back. Anybody want to share why they're here? Yeah.
Just wanted to learn more about Buddhism. It's something I've been more increasingly interested in.
Yeah. Awesome. Anyone else?
My partner's here. He wants to learn how to meditate, which means that I have to learn.
Making it easier on me. Yeah. Your partner wants to learn to meditate, which means you have to learn how to meditate. It's actually very courageous, because many people show up here because the other half in their life doesn't want to meditate and isn't going to meditate, and they're actually in some other group somewhere else because of those of you who are here, and you're here, because of that dynamic. So I give you credit for doing this thing together. It's a hard thing. It comes up a lot. For those of you who've been at this for a while, you might have those that you know and love, and you really think they should meditate or they could benefit from this, Buddhist path and this meditation stuff. But it's really hard to get others to do this thing, And really one of the best ways is to just practice it yourself. And then the people that you spend time with and the people you're around, they kind of notice that maybe you're changing a little bit, a little calmer, a little gentler, a little nicer, not triggered as much, not, reacting so quickly. So very often I just share with people that the best way to kind of get others into this stuff is to just try to model it and do it yourself, because that's how we really begin to kind of bring the benefit of this practice into our lives. For those who are new, it's not necessarily, you'll learn about Buddhism and meditation and things like that, but it's really more about how can what you learned here, or anywhere for that matter, around Buddhist teachings and meditation practice, how can that impact your life? And your life is spent around those you know and love, and communities and strangers and people you don't like, all of that. So the challenge in the practice is to figure out how to bring these teachings into other areas of your life. Because learning everything about Buddhism and meditating for 72 hours straight won't do you any good if you walk out there and you're pissed off at the first person who cuts you off on the freeway. Right? So the practice is to bring this into your life. With that, to those who are joining virtually, welcome, glad you're here, thanks for showing up. We'll start with a meditation practice. A couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you, right? You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working or not working, are you doing it right or wrong? You're just going to sit and breathe. You'll hear sounds inside the room, sounds outside. This is life, right? People cough, phones ring, dogs bark. That's just what happens. This practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of that chaos. So again, for those who are new, you're not trying to empty your thoughts. You're not trying to think nothing. You're not trying to go blank. Your mind is going to race just as much as it always does. And I'll say things periodically to either wake you up because you've fallen asleep or just remind you that you're lost in thought and bring you back to present moment. Posture. Find a position that's comfortable. Draw in a cushion. Slide into the front third if comfortable. Relaxing the shoulders. Hands can be on the knees or in the lap, whatever works for you. If you're on a bench or chair, however you're seated. Also just trying to sit up straight, relaxing the shoulders. If you need to move, simply move. Movement doesn't make you a bad meditator, just means you gotta move. I will guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. Most important, do not expect anything. We're just going to sit and breathe. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. Expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Breathing in Follow breath in. Breathing out. Follow breath out. Letting go of expectations. Letting go of judgments from the practice. Just sitting. Breathing. Learning to be comfortable in stillness and quiet, just sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. And most important, with the practice of meditation, to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. Realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means, very simply, for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens. More reactions. That's it. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to every other 20-minute period of your day. So all we're working on is closing the gap where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. It's not an easy practice. It's not always fun. Meditation, Buddhist practice, is not an escape. If your life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, this isn't going to fix that. It helps you become aware of why your life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, so you can then begin to make changes in your life. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's just sitting, breathing, becoming aware of what you think, what you say, and what you do. And that's all. Learning to be kind to yourself and every single person you encounter, every moment of your life. That's why this practice is so easy. You just have to be nice to people. You're a nice bunch of people, I think. You can handle that. It's not that difficult. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything around us, which is where we spend so much of our time, hoping they do this, hoping they do that, wishing they would do this, wishing they would do that, why did this happen, why did that happen? We spend so much time trying to control, fix, and change other people. It's hard enough for you to change yourself, let alone somebody else. This practice is working on our mind and our reaction to what's going on around us. That's what will change your life. Or you can spend the rest of your life trying to manipulate and control and fix other people, because that always works out real well. So with that, I'll pause. For me, I really just prefer to respond to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. And for those who are joining virtually, once again, welcome. There's a chat box on your screen somewhere. Feel free to put any questions you may have there, and I'll do my best to respond as well. So we'll use the rest of our brief time this evening for questions, if anyone has any.
I have two questions. One is wondered if you could generalize the meaning and
Those?
of the hand mudras, and the meaning and the use of the hand mudras. And then also I wanted to know if you are aware or can speak to any overlap with Buddhism and yoga.
I'm such a wrong guy to ask both those questions to, but I appreciate the questions. So the first question on hand mudras, right? I could tell you what the basics are, what they mean, so could Google. I'm not a fan, personally. I think from a practice standpoint, people get very wrapped up in, this jhana mudra, this anjali mudra, the compassion mudra. Like putting your hands in certain places doesn't always mean anything. Other than feeling like we have done what this mudra says to do. I look at mudras as expressions of body language. And I think the way that we carry ourselves is an actual real expression of our mind. And I think in practice, that's what's important. Not to sit in meditation, and I'm a Zen practitioner, 20 plus years, and there are very definitive steps of how you sit and how you hold your fingers and your hands, and literally where you put your tongue in your mouth, that the tip of your tongue goes to where the gums meet the back of your teeth, and you put it there and you swallow once and you hold and you don't move. Right? I mean, I get all that. I've done all that. And I think for the average person on a day-to-day basis, it does you absolutely no good. Because then what happens is you get too wrapped up in thinking, am I sitting the right way? Are my thumbs pressing hard enough but not too hard? Okay. My master always taught the mudra here, right, this Anjali mudra, you bring palms together. She always said that you're looking at the past, you're looking at the future, and you're bringing to the present moment.
I like that.
And I'm pretty sure she made that shit up. And I've been sharing it ever since she taught me that. Right? Now, is that in some Buddhist sutra from 2,500 years ago? Probably not. But it resonated with me. Right? So that's why I kind of seriously but jokingly say, like, I'm not big on the mudras, because we can get, like, Buddhist practice, especially Zen practice, can be very, like, rigid and forced. And it could actually almost potentially harm your life. Because then you're too focused on, am I doing things right? Am I the right kind of Buddhist or the wrong kind of Buddhist? I don't care if you're Christian, Catholic, Muslim, Jewish, pagan, Mormon, or lack thereof. Just be kind and be aware of how you carry yourself in seated meditation, in walking, in everything you're doing. So I think that's what's important. But if you really want to memorize and learn like 50 mudras, just Google 50 mudras, and they're there. Yeah.
I guess generally I was just, I appreciate all the information and your insights and opinions and all of the above. I guess I was generally wondering, are they intended to direct the flow of energy or to bring in a certain
I'll just stop you there.
anything? Or
I'm not a manifester. I'm not a new age. I'm not like, if I sit like this, that means the Ferrari's going to show up, right? Google mudras. I'm the wrong guy to ask about
No
that
worries.
stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
And on that note, same thing with yoga. Yoga is a beautiful practice. The Buddha himself, Siddhartha Gautama, was a prince from India. He left home at 29, if you don't know the story. And he roamed the base of the Himalayan mountains for 6 years as a yogi. He did yoga. They lived the yogi practices. That's what they were. There are a lot of similarities in Hindu practice, which is how the Buddha was raised, right? Buddhism didn't exist when he was raised, right? In India at that time, the majority of the people were Hindu. So that's what he was raised with. Then he went on and he taught for 45 years, from 35 to 80, and then he died at 80, as I just said. And it is what we refer to as Buddhism. So there are some crossovers and some similarities, but yoga and Buddhism are two completely separate worlds. Hinduism and Buddhism are two completely separate worlds. They're not the same thing. There are some very distinct, parallels and similarities, and there are also some pretty drastic differences. But often I'll say, not necessarily I'll say to people, but I hear people say, like, "Oh, do you meditate?" And they're like, "Well, I do yoga." Okay, yoga can be a meditation. It can also be a physical workout. It can also be laying in Shavasana thinking about, when you get to go home and have your glass of wine. In fact, you can even now do yoga with wine and goats. So, I'm not knocking either, especially the goats. I love goats, But just be careful in this kind of, modern 2024 new age spiritual world of thinking that just because you go to yoga and pay $50 for your membership, that you're doing some spiritual practice. Because everybody can be certified as a yoga teacher in like 8 weeks. So, and I'm a big fan if it's done how many? 4, sorry, thank you. I stand corrected. You can be certified in 4 weeks. So, and I have a lot of dear friends, obviously, in this world for 20 years that are yoga teachers and phenomenal yoga teachers, and they take it as a very devoted, dedicated, deep spiritual practice. And it very much is and can be that. It can also be the exact opposite. So, to each their own. Yeah. What else? Questions?
I was reading a book, The Boundless Heart, and it's all about kindness, compassion, joy. But one of the terms they used a lot was aversion, and I was just kind of confused on what they meant by aversion.
Yeah. So the question around the book Boundless Heart and talking about compassion and joy and all these wonderful Buddhist things, and then around aversion, and what does that mean? So in Buddhist teachings and practice, you look at craving, desire, as the Buddha taught, is what leads to suffering. And to clarify for those who might be brand new to this stuff, it doesn't mean that all cravings are bad, right? Those of you who showed up here for the first time, right? There was some craving or desire to find more balance, to find a spiritual practice. Like there's healthy cravings and healthy desires. The Buddha said there are healthy cravings, healthy desires. The desire to suffer less is a healthy craving, healthy desire. Now let's take 30 seconds or 3 seconds and ramble through your head all the cravings and desires that you might have that are not so healthy, right? We all got them. Healthy cravings, unhealthy cravings. And the aversion is things that we're like running from. And we're often running from things that are actually healthy for us. So we have this aversion to this over here, so we run over there. And then we get over there and we're like, okay, now I'm over here and I can go this way or that way. Well, I have an aversion to that and I got to run away from that and I end up over here. So we have these aversions to things, these things that we don't like, these things we don't want to go towards. But very often, and again, there's a million scenarios, so I'm just rambling on one. Very often, what we have an aversion to can actually be where we need to go. What that means is, what are we often afraid of the most? That's a big question, but what's one thing that really drives us crazy all day long? Our own what? Our own mind. Our own thoughts. So one could say in this example that we have an aversion to sitting with our own thoughts and our own mind. Yet, what that means is if we are afraid to sit with our own thoughts, if we are afraid to sit with our own mind, we have an aversion to that. What that means is, you know what you probably need to do? Sit with your own thoughts and sit with your own mind. So it's to recognize these aversions, what we're running from, why we're running from them. And can we learn to sit with things that are uncomfortable? And I'm not suggesting starting with like, the big things, the little things, like room temperature, right? I mean, how many of you have your little thermostats and it's set to your perfect number, and if it's like 1 degree up, you're like, oh, I got it, it goes on. Right? 72 degrees. If it gets to 74, nope, got to come back down to 72. If it's on 71, we're like, nope, I got to change it. Right? Those of us who are old enough to remember, pre all these things, radio stations, TVs that actually had commercials, right? 1985, having to sit close enough to the TV so you can turn the little thing because we didn't have remote controls yet, right? Because God forbid we should actually watch a commercial. We instantly have to have everything. We have an aversion to things, just to everything. Food on our plate. We order food. Some of it we like, some of it we don't like. So we throw away what we don't like. Just eat what's on your plate. Assuming you're not allergic to it or, whatever it is. So recognize we constantly want different temperature. We want different clothes. We want different hairstyles. I don't have to worry about that, right? We want different shoes. Right? We're just constantly like, nothing is ever good enough.
Right.
And this is what the Buddha called dukkha, discomfort, angst, dissatisfaction. And we spend our entire lives seeking and craving to get away from discomfort. But if you spend your entire life trying to get away from discomfort, then you're going to spend your entire life trying to get away from discomfort. And that's going to make you tired. So this practice is learning to be with discomfort to an extent. Nothing unsafe or nothing abusive or trauma. I mean, remove yourself from unhealthy, unsafe situations, of course. But the average day-to-day stuff that we sit with, that we have an aversion to, it's probably fine. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I wonder what your thoughts are about how Buddhism connects to radical acceptance.
Tara Brach, have you read her?
No. Can you please repeat it?
Her name is Tara Brach,
Tara Brach.
B-R-A-C-H, and her best-selling book is titled Radical Acceptance. So I will defer to her 200 pages on radical acceptance, but that expression is really beautiful. One, from being an 80s kid, I love the word rad and radical. And around Buddhist teachings, similar to the kind of same idea of aversion, is that forget the word radical for a minute and just look at acceptance. How hard is it for us to accept life as it is? How hard is it? Fun. It's hard. Right? So forget radical acceptance. Just start with baby step acceptance. It's really hard for us to accept life as it is, to accept people as they are, to accept the conflict that we're facing every day. We're constantly trying to fix it, change it, manipulate it. Everything I said at the end of meditation. Everything that's wrong, we must fix it immediately, is our mindset very often. Because we can't accept life as it is. It's what led us all here. We're not okay. Except for maybe the one person that came to be a supportive partner, right? We're all here because we chose to be here. So we're not accepting life as it is, and we get into things like this to try to be okay with life as it is. Now, radical acceptance is that's just grand. My master always said, do not expect anything from anyone, ever. To me, that is radical acceptance. And that's the practice. Tara Brach she's an incredible teacher. I think one of the best, people out there. She has YouTubes. Her YouTube channel is endless. Wonderful 30-minute to an hour-long talks and meditation. We used to have a Tara. We'll bring it back probably, but pre-pandemic we had once a week during the afternoon, our noon meditation. We did Tara Brach hour. We would actually show a 30-minute meditation and talk, and really wonderful. But yeah, she's incredible. And her new book out is called Radical Compassion. So once you get over once you figure out the radical acceptance part, then you can move into radical compassion. And I also just as I'm just judging based on your facial expressions, this is at least resonating with you intellectually. The hard part also, for many of us in this room, where do we need to practice radical acceptance the most? ourselves. And very often, for some people, it's much easier to accept other people's faults that we perceive as their faults and wrongdoings. Right? We can forgive them potentially, but for us, no way. So radical acceptance deeply applies to ourselves as well. Yeah. So, and Tara can really help with that. She's great. What else?
Kind of having analysis paralysis because I feel like I know what your answer is going to be, and I also feel like, well, I don't know. But I was recently diagnosed with ADHD, which looking back, I can see throughout my whole life. So I'm coming into awareness now and like learning about it and how it applies to my own thinking. And I've realized I have these like very strong feelings of motivation that come at times when I'm not able to align that with action. So like I'll drive the kids to school and I'll think about all the things I can't wait to get home to do. And then I will get home in silence and like stare at a blank wall for a long time. And it's very frustrating. And I hear like the aversion and I hear the acceptance and I'm like trying to apply that to myself. And I feel like generally I've been really good in my practice and I've had all kinds of challenges to try to like, you know, where I've got to use my practice, and I'm kind of at this like impasse where I'm upset that I'm frustrated with myself, but also frustrated with myself.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, one thing is, so try next time on your drive home after dropping off the kids or on the way to or from, just tell yourself, I just want to go home and do nothing but stare at that wall. And two things will happen. You'll get home and you'll stare at that wall and you will have accomplished everything that you were desiring. So that's a win, right? Or you'll do the opposite and actually do all the stuff that you want to do that isn't staring at the wall, and that's a win, unless you then go back to feeling like you're a failure because you just wanted to stare at the wall. And so, and I say that stuff always jokingly with humor, but also very seriously. Like, to me, this practice is and always has been about intention. And a lot of the Buddhist teachings around loving kindness, compassion, joy, equanimity, generosity, morality, patience, all these kind of key buzzwords that you hear in Buddhism all the time, it really comes down to what is our intention in that moment. And first and foremost, I'll start with kind of the end of what you said. When you realize that you had this intention to go home and do all these things, and you're just like, you're done, realize that the person that is now at home, staring at that wall, is not the same person that was driving and thinking about all the stuff they wanted to do. Meaning, don't beat yourself up for not doing everything else that you thought you wanted to do. If you're going to stare at the wall, then be the best wall starer that there is. You know? I mean, Bodhidharma, the great Zen master, who brought Buddhism, from India into China, they say he sat and stared at a wall for 9 years. And he was so determined to not fall asleep that he cut his eyelids off. And he threw them, and that's where all the tea in China came from, initially. He's the founder of Shaolin Monastery and the first patriarch of what we call Chan, Chinese Buddhism, which became Zen in Japan. But if stare at a wall, just stare at a wall. And then maybe just be a little more realistic on how many things you think you're going to accomplish in the short period of time that you actually have after dropping the kids off. Instead of a whole list of everything you're going to tackle and conquer, just 2 things. One of them being stare at the wall, and one of them something else, and just be done. And again, I'm not, the ADHD, I've worked with people, I don't have that, I've worked with people for 20 plus years who do. And so as you're on your journey with that, and those, again, this is not a question, I'm just a statement that whether one takes meds for it or not, that will adjust things. Doctors will guide and advise things, and as you continue to learn and research and study how to be with that, you'll also determine other skills and ways to kind of simplify things and to not try to take over the world, because the mind can try to do that. So I don't know if that's helpful at all, but just slow it down. Yeah. Yeah.
You alluded to having a master. How did you sort of find a master and get serious about your practice?
Yeah, so the question was, I alluded to having a master, how did I find my master and get serious about the practice? There's a real famous kind of expression in Buddhism that says, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And finding a master, I personally don't believe is like a search or a hunt. I don't, again, it kind of goes, and especially for those who are new, my comments about the yoga and the mudras and things like that, I take a very, to me, what I see is a very realistic way of like Buddhism in America in 2024. And you read all the stories and books about the monk and the disciple and the master and things like that. So we might get on our mindset that we want a master, right? A master in Buddhism is very different from what I think 99 out of 100 people actually want. Most people want someone to talk to. Most people want someone to listen to them. Most people want someone to sit and ask questions to. That's not what a Buddhist master to me is. You don't ask questions. You don't think. You just do. And for me, I showed up at the temple 21 years ago, a mile down the street, because I was angry, depressed, and miserable and didn't want to spend the rest of my life that way. So I was ready to just surrender literally everything that was in my life. And this wasn't some, rock bottom moment. I just didn't want to live that way anymore. And I showed up and they gave me a hammer, they told me to sweep, and I just did shit every single day. I didn't ask questions, I didn't learn about sutras, I didn't even care about meditation. I learned to be of service to the temple. And I did that for 2.5 years, and then she said, "Do you want to move to the monastery in Taiwan?" So that was it. But I think that often people ask about looking for that teacher or that master. I don't think our culture has very healthy relationships and dynamics around Buddhist teachers and students. I think it's very unhealthy and toxic, quite honestly. So I caution people around that stuff in our culture. For one, you don't pay a Buddhist master.
Right.
And I'm not even talking to you specifically ever, this is to everybody, but you don't hire them, right? You shouldn't hire Buddhist teachers. They're not like for rent, they're practicing. So, yeah.
So I think I was asking the wrong question then. So
Oh, great.
the question would be, how do I deepen my practice?
How do you deepen your practice?
If I wanted to achieve what your path and what you've done.
Oh, don't try to achieve my path. It'll make you miserable.
You know what I mean.
I think to deepen your practice is, first starts with having a dedicated meditation practice every single day. Are you going to leave your job and family and all that kind of stuff? No. Okay. So you have a job and a family and you're in that.
Not a family, but a job.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you have to bring it into that, is what I'm saying. Right? So you can't just not show up at work for the next 6 months. Right? Because you would then not have work. And if you didn't have work, you wouldn't have money.
Right.
If you didn't have money, you couldn't pay for all your stuff. That's what she also said to me, is, "Jeff, you work so hard to make so much money to buy so many things. If you didn't have so many things, you wouldn't need so much money, you wouldn't have to work so hard. And then you could spend the rest of your life doing what you actually wanted to do." So here's your first lesson from your non-teacher. Stop buying so much shit that you don't need.
Right.
That's how. To deepen your practice, stop buying so much stuff that you don't need. If you want to deepen your practice. And look at how you spend your time. Look at who you spend time with. Look at the things you look at on these things. Look at the amount of clothes you wear, the amount of hats you have, the amount of shoes you have. going to deepen your practice, recognize how greedy we are. The root cause of Buddhist teachings is greed, anger, and ignorance, the 3 poisons. To deepen your practice, look very deeply at your levels of greed, your levels of anger, and your levels of ignorance. Look at that honestly, deeply, every single day. Spend less. Care for others more. That's how you deepen practice. And I didn't learn all that at a Buddhist temple or in a monastery. Yeah.
What do you mean by ignorance? Not knowing, not being...
Sure. I just want to see if there's a question here. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead, sorry.
Okay, to not be ignorant is to study, to learn as much as you
Yeah,
can.
good question. So ignorance, it's a word that often kind of troubles people because we don't like to be called greedy or angry or ignorant, right? Yet here we are. Ignorance, it doesn't mean uneducated, it doesn't mean dumb, it does mean, to me, the best teaching or the way I've heard ignorance explained around Buddhist practice is you just look at the word ignore. And ignorance is ignoring the true nature of reality. We overcome ignorance, as the Buddha taught. We overcome greed with generosity. We overcome anger with compassion. We overcome ignorance with wisdom. So often people say, like, well, what is ultimate wisdom? I don't even go there, right? Do you know when you do something you shouldn't do, usually? Yeah, do you know you're like, that was really stupid, I shouldn't have done that? Right? Sometimes yes, sometimes no, but most of the time we do. Do that less, and that, by default, is very wise. But ignoring reality, as Thich Nhat Hanh said, nirvana, liberation, freedom from suffering, is freedom from views. And understand that as we roam around through our day, every single day, our view of reality isn't reality. It's just our view. And how attached are we to those views? You've been in an argument today? Yesterday? Last week? Recently? This month? We'll go with Mars. Yeah. You're like, yeah, an hour ago, always. That's why she sits in the front. When we're in those arguments, it's because we're attached to our views. That attachment to your view is ignorance. When we're in an argument, do we really want to listen to other people's views? No, that's ignorance. We're ignoring reality, which is maybe we're not right. At the very least, maybe we should give them space to speak and express, and maybe we should listen.
And that's learning.
Learning, yeah. But I don't like to think as wisdom as like this, not like intellectual knowledge. I look at that wisdom in Buddhism is more of a heartfelt wisdom.
Gotcha.
You know, just being able to recite a bunch of stuff doesn't do you any good, and you have to kind of feel it, I think. There's a question here. Thanks, Greg. Also, hi Jeff, it's Billy. What do Buddhists typically... so it's a question about they're deceased, so around cremation, burial, things like that. So the very traditional, typical way around Buddhism is cremation. Always nice to wrap up with a nice light subject of cremation and rebirth. Thanks, Billy. But as I referenced earlier, for those who don't know, the Buddha from India 2,500 years ago, 500 years before Christ. So at that time, Hindu, they believed in rebirth, they believed in a continuation of consciousness, they believed in reincarnation, as the Tibetans refer to it a lot, whatever you want to say about it. Now keep in mind, at that time, 2,500 years ago in India, if you walked up to somebody then and said you got one life and then you're going to heaven or hell, they would have thought you were kind of crazy. Like you would have been the cuckoo one, right? Today, you go up to the average person and say, hey, you're going to be reborn. They're like, you're nuts. So at that time, when the Buddha was teaching, very different, right? Again, 500 years before Christ. So the gods that they were referring to and goddesses were Hindu gods and goddesses, and there were endless Hindu gods and goddesses. So they had those beliefs, and they believed that you would be reborn. They believed that this physical form that we call body came together for a period of time. It's just a shell, and then would cease to exist. That the consciousness would continue on. So along that same lines, you would cremate the physical body. Each Buddhist tradition, a lot having to do with the culture where they're from, is different as well. But there's a period of time that when the body, when the individual dies, whether it's human, animal, whatever it is, you would leave the body alone for a period of time to allow the consciousness to leave the body. And then you would go towards cremation. Doesn't always work so well. Modern day hospitals, and I'm sure there's some religious rites if you really push that, but so yeah, it's cremation. Yeah. The impermanent nature of all phenomena. And impermanence is a very big teaching in Buddhism, that we all come together for a period of time and we all will cease to exist. Every person, place, thing in your life right now will pass at some point in time. So what this teaches us is be grateful, because we don't know. We don't know that we're all going to make it home tonight, wherever home may be. We don't know that all our loved ones in our lives will wake up tomorrow. We don't know that we wake up tomorrow. So since we understand deeply the impermanent nature of all phenomena, hopefully it allows us to just appreciate what we have and not hold on to all the anger and resentments and grudges and attachments that we have. To set some of that down and just allow yourself to breathe. Like, we're all going to die. In an hour from now or in 100 years from now, we're all going to die. So is most of the stuff that you're angry about and that you're carrying around inside you worth torturing yourself for? Mentally and emotionally? Probably not. So the practice is to just enjoy being present. Any final thoughts or questions? You're welcome, Billy. Thanks for the question. I appreciate it. Yeah, one more, go ahead.
So, and you just mentioned about, the belief in reincarnation, that the body dies, the consciousness carries on, and then it's reborn. And I'm just wondering, what are the thoughts about how, when we come into a new life, we're pretty much, it feels to us like it's a fresh start, and we've got consciousness, that we've gained through all these other lifetimes. It's, it may slowly unveil as we progress through life or through doing different practices. But what are the thoughts on that? Why is that like that? And is there a way to regain that? Is there a path to regaining that?
Yeah, no, you're great. Let me close with the clear understanding of rebirth. What's your name?
Scott.
Scott. Thanks, Scott, for the questions. And let me, since you asked the question again, I was thinking this earlier, and hopefully I would have seen you, but I'll say it now, and I'll close with this thought. Please ask the mudra question to people who actually practice mudras.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, because they will give you beautiful answers, and they will teach you all about the importance of them and the energy flow and how it makes it all one. So please ask them that. Around rebirth, there are different teachings on this, and these teachings come from different cultures, okay? So there's the Tibetan Buddhism, for example. It's called the Bardo stage. They say that when the body dies, the consciousness leaves, and at some point over the next 49 days, usually on the 7th day at some point over the 49 days, you have sperm, you have egg, they come together, you have consciousness that enters, and you have life. And to your question very specifically, yes, the teaching is that in that Bardo stage, your memory is kind of like wiped, for lack of better words, right? But with what you really want to know is, well, how do I remember all that stuff, right? The teaching is that with the cultivation of samadhi, concentration, meditation, they say that the Buddha was able to recall every single past life because his mind was so clear. Most of us can't even remember what we had for breakfast, right? Let alone last week or a past life. Another beautiful thing that there was a monk in Taiwan who taught life and death studies. And what he said, and I always love this teaching, and again, 100 people you ask, they'll give you 100 different answers, but I really liked the way he taught this topic specifically. And he said the mistake we make right? Us unenlightened human beings, is we think like, okay, I'm Jeff, this is my life, and then I'm going to die, and what's my next life going to be? He said that's the mistake as a human that we make because we look at them as separate lives. What he said was that it is all just one endless continuation, one long life that is broken up by physical forms. So if that's the case, your memory, your consciousness, it's not contingent upon what physical form it's in. But for some reason, we get so wrapped up in so much junk that we can't remember stuff. But a mind that is like a mirror can. Do I have any idea what that's like? No. But there's a version of the teaching that is around that, and the clarity and the ability to recall endless lives. Yeah. So, good stuff. All right, so we'll join palms. We'll close on that. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to those who need it most. All right, thank you all. Before you head out, we have a few quick announcements from our Dharma Bum host, Eddie.
Hello everyone, I'm tonight's host, Eddie. We opened the Dharma Bum Temple 17 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those who lead are not nuns, gurus, masters, teachers, or not looking for students. They're simply practitioners sharing their interpretation of the practice. Every night we have different classes led by different people from various Buddhist traditions. We have a recovery sangha that meets several times a week for anyone with addiction, and our food redistribution program is every Thursday at 4:30. We have classes and programs every day, and everything we offer here is always free. The full schedule is on our website and also posted in the entryway above the shoe rack. We have a lending library. If you see a book you like, feel free to borrow it and bring it back whenever you are done. Please straighten your seat or cushion before you head out. If a few people could stay to close and latch the windows or straighten the chairs, that'd be helpful. Thank you for being here. We wish you well. Hope to see you all again soon.
Thanks, Ed.